Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Uncensored Critic podcast. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. It means the world to me. Thank you very, very, very much. And today we welcome along another fantastic person and acting coach to help you learn your lines and improve your memory in all things in this business. And that comes in the version of Joyce Hshieh. So, for anyone who's not familiar with Joyce's work, let's take a moment to introduce her right now. So, she is the founder of Off Book It, a platform dedicated to helping actors with line memorization in a fun and active way. She's helped countless actors with line learning, removing mental blocks and providing great techniques to help them now and in the future. She trained at the theater school at DePaul University in Chicago, Illinois, and also a 3-day champion on the US game show Jeopardy for NBC. She has featured on many Q&A panels, including for the Actors Breakfast Club, DaJuan Johnson's self-tapes, That Book, Blythe Howard's Commercial Workshop, Anastasia Edwards' Actors Biz, The Actors Playbook, and Why I'll Never Make It, which is another podcast as well. For more information, check out her website and Instagram. Both are down below in the description. And also go to her website for your free masterclass video on how to learn your lines when you're up against the clock. And links to her courses and everything down below. And if you sign up for that masterclass, you get a $100 discount on all of Joyce's courses as well. So get yourself on that. So for any actors listening or watching who want advice on learning lines, this one is for you today. So Joyce, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me.
No, my pleasure. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a hot day here
Yeah,
in Washington, D.C. area. Yes.
Washington DC area. Yeah, how's things in the US at the moment?
Well, I mean, this area, it's, very government run, so it's chaotic around here, at least in the news, but generally it's fine.
Oh, good. No, but we're all with you. We're all with you at this time, so we'll work together. So we start at the beginning, really, for every guest. So, in your case, Joyce, where did it come from? The love of acting, art, being in this business. Where did it come from?
Yeah, so I really got my start with acting, my first taste of acting in high school, with high school musicals. My school was a really tiny school in Ohio, and we didn't have a fancy drama program or anything like that. We just had the high school musical every year. And we didn't even have like a proper auditorium or anything at the time. We just performed on kind of a janky stage in our gymnasium. So it was low production, you know, small town kind of stuff, but it was kind of my first taste of being on stage and acting, and it was a lot of fun. And I just remember that feeling of kind of feeling strangely comfortable on stage
Mm,
because I was a very shy person, and for me to feel just comfortable on stage in front of a lot of people was kind of a interesting kind of magical feeling. And yeah, it was just that first taste of like how acting is kind of this potent distillation of being alive. And I really loved that. So I kind of just wanted to do more of it.
yeah, no, it's that those first steps, that first feeling where that in the butterflies in your stomach, and you're going, yeah, this is where I want to be. This is my muse now. Was there any kind of particular film or show that you ever saw when you were younger that really inspired you, that made you think, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to be involved in that.
Um, hmm, a particular show. I I mean, I loved movies and TV and things. I guess because we did musicals at my school, and we were involved in like I was involved in choir and things, and so they're doing like musical medleys. The thing that's popping in my mind that I have a memory of like from high school is Les Miserables.
Hmm.
Like they had that kind of like anniversary performance thing that was like on a DVD. And I remember kind of being compelled by that. Also I remember at the time the movie version of Chicago came out, and I
Yes.
remember being really in love with that. at the time in high school. And I got to see the show on Broadway. And I remember loving that too. It was like kind of cool to see like the movie version and then also the stage version. And that sort of like stripped down theatricality of Chicago was really, really amazing. I remember that, just being compelled by that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mentioned in the intro you went to the theatre school at DePaul University in Chicago. Tell me about your time there.
Yeah, so it was a pretty intense conservatory program. Um, it was pretty competitive. So they had a cut actually, where so they had, their first year students, and then it was like this thing that was kind of hanging over everybody's head. It was like half of us are gonna get cut, half of us are gonna get cut. And so yeah, it was like at the end of the first year, half of the students got cut and didn't come back for the rest of the program, which is pretty brutal. I think they eventually got rid of that cut.
Yeah.
But it was, yeah, it was like a professional training program. So, we were taking lots of classes in acting, movement, voice and speech. We did a whole year of Shakespeare, which was really amazing. I loved that year. That was actually like my favorite year of the program. I felt like I learned so much from that and appreciation of Shakespeare. But uh, it was a great program in a lot of ways. It expands so much and gets you in touch with your body and your emotions and things. But I think, a lot of people have similar experiences where it's like there's something kind of missing in programs like that because it's kind of isolated from the real world or real
Yeah.
world scenario of like what it's actually like trying to pursue the business of acting. So, the kind of just real world business aspect is kind of missing. Also, line memorization was completely missing. I don't know like what your background or training was, but I think it's pretty typical that line memorization doesn't get touched on basically at all.
Mm.
Um, but but other than that, I mean, I loved the experience. I thought it was a great training. It was very intense. Um, so it was stressful in some ways, but it was great being in shows a lot. That was another thing that is like not the same as the real world, where you're just being cast in
Yeah.
shows every quarter, and like that's not how it is in real life.
Unfortunately not.
Um,
Unfortunately not.
right, right. But it was a lot of fun, and it was a great learning experience for sure.
Yeah, yeah. No, you mentioned a good point there is that you're not taught how to line learn. You simply just say, "Oh, just learn this," just learn that, and you're like, okay. So then you just kind of you try and learn it in the beginning, just repeat it over and over again, which I know is something we'll touch on in just a moment. But also we'll talk a little bit about because you've mentioned a lot actually in your masterclass about Shakespeare and how much you love it, and as well you're talking to a fellow Shakespearean lover right here as well. But more on that a little bit later. So, but it's true. It's like you're not taught how to learn lines. You're literally just told learn this, and you're going okay, and then you just kind of do your best to try and get it all in and cram it all in. I mean, that should really be a big that should be taught at these sort of schools. Like, would you agree?
Uh, that's what I think. I
Yeah.
I absolutely think that they could use some sort of training for line memorization because it is so fundamental to being an actor. Like you have to be able to do it. And so many actors struggle with it. And it's not because they're not talented or something. It's just difficult to do. And yeah, there's just this expectation to just do it and
Mm.
almost kind of sometimes even like a romanticization. I don't know if you ever come across that sometimes of like you just put in the hours and the effort and because you're so in love with suffering for for this art or that's that sort of mentality.
Yeah.
Um like you just repeat it 1,000 times because
Yeah.
you're so devoted. But I've found that that actually isn't really the best way to go about it. And Yeah, that's usually if you get any advice at all on memorization, it's usually just yeah, just repeat it over and over, do it by rote, and
Mm,
maybe pace around a bit, or fiddle around with a pen or some, I don't know, whatever, to kind of get some physicality. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really help that much.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, do you think that's where it all started, like for you, like to start this business and of course your website Off Book It, it started from the fact that you were looking around all these places and going, why is no one teaching us this? Why is this not being taught? I'm going to have to do something about this.
Absolutely. So I always knew that it was a struggle
Mm,
in school and, in the professional world. I struggled with lines. I wasn't the absolute worst at it. I always managed to get off book in time, though I did go up on my lines in a performance before, and that was a pretty horrifying experience.
hey,
Um,
we've all been there. We've all been there.
yeah, yeah, where it's just like whoosh, like the floor is just
Yeah.
dropping beneath you. Um, but I just saw it among all my fellow actors where it was just always this kind of awkward thing of like having to get off book and you're just kind of struggling with it. And
Mm,
I just knew it was super common. And when later on I kind of stumbled across, these techniques for memory and learning, reading books about this stuff, I kind of put the puzzle pieces together and realized wait, there's actually a lot out here that people need to be incorporating that
mm,
we could be using to make this so much easier. I feel like these sorts of strategies and techniques for learning, they should be incorporated more even in academic settings. Like they're not even incorporated enough
yeah.
there. But you at least get some of that, like exposure to that. But acting and line memorization, it was like getting nothing. Like, so I really saw like there needs to be some cross-pollination here.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to fill that gap and kind of like wave my arms in the air and go like, this can be a lot easier. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fundamental. Like for any actor, it's just that's where you start. Is that you know your lines and you know what you're saying, and therefore the work can start after that. That's when you get the lines learned. And that's like the skeleton, and then you add the flesh and everything. That's the emotions. That's the feelings, etc. I'm reminded of when I went to like, as you guys said, youth theatre school. I went to a place in Guildford, and there was one time we were doing screen acting and we had these sides to learn and we were given literally like 5 minutes to learn these sides of these scenes and record them. And I was one of the scenes where we literally just got in front of the camera and I was really unfair with me and this other person got given this little side full of, it's like something from ER or Grey's Anatomy or something with this immensely medical dialogue, like cc's of this, of the injection here, blah, blah, blah. And obviously I got in front of the camera, I got 2 lines in and just went, no, 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 it's not there. It's not there. And there's a few others as well. But I think that was meant to test us. I remember one girl was just literally got 3 lines in and just went, oh, fuck. And all of us were just like, yeah, we've all been there. It was good fun though. It was funny, but obviously wouldn't do that in the business. But no, it's a real interesting thing just to learn. And that's sort of a good lead on, I think, to your masterclass and which I've watched and from your website, and it's a brilliant, just you really opened my eyes to what line learning can be. And I think the one thing that jumped out at me the most was it's a really good toolbox to have when you're against the clock, and if you've got 3 or 4 self tapes to do in a matter of hours, then these techniques can help you to get the lines in a lot easier. And you divided it up into 4 steps: organizing the script, analyzing the script, imagine, get up and act, and finally test and strengthen. So we're going to go through sort of each one sort of in a nutshell, really. So we'll start at the beginning. So organizing the script, why is that important?
Organizing the script is the fundamental step. That's why it's my first step. It's the one I recommend to everybody.
Hmm.
Um, so the reason why that's really important, when you just get a fresh script, it's kind of chaotic. right? Like your brain kind of doesn't know where everything is. And I think in the masterclass, I give this analogy of like a messy room versus a organized room.
Mhm.
And a messy room, it's like, where is everything? It's just chaos and it's overwhelming. But when you organize it, it makes it so much more manageable. So it's the same thing with a script. The main way to organize a script is to break it down into smaller pieces.
Mhm.
And that what that does is it reveals the structure of the scene, and it shows you kind of the major transitions and the major events, and it helps you to keep track of those things in your mind. And when you have that, you have just this skeleton, this structural base that you can build your memorization on. It gives you something to kind of hook into. Otherwise, you're just kind of floating around in chaos.
Mm.
So yeah, so that is the most fundamental piece that I recommend.
Yeah, and I think you sort of talk about how you've got to break it into chunks and like
Mhm.
not just like random chunks. Okay, well, like this page, this page, this page. No, you find like I remember once someone saying to me like if you break it down, you give every section a title. So like
Mhm.
it could be anything, like the rage moment, the courtroom scene, the discovery of the affair or something, just anything that, and then suddenly you go, okay, we're gonna do this section. Which one? The discovery of the affair, and you go, okay, right, we're in now, and you know all your lines for that bit as well. So yeah, I think, and also you say that size matters. You know, don't make them too small or too big. You got to find the right balance and meaningful and yet manageable. You know, and so how do you find the right balance with the chunks? How do you make them like the right size?
Yeah, so the main thing is kind of finding those big transitions, you know, where the subject changes or something, or there's a big character entrance or
Mm,
exit.
yeah.
Um, Generally, you know, big enough where you're able to remember, kind of recall what goes on in that chunk, basically, where it's not too big, where you're like, okay, 10 things happen in that. That's a
Mhm.
little too hard to keep track of. But if it's like, oh yes, this is the part where, like you said, it's the rage moment, or and then he apologizes, or something like that, just being able to keep track of it in your mind. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it just so like I say, you can just jump in at any moment. You just say, okay, that bit, okay, now we're into it. But oh yeah, there's a bit you quote. You mentioned of Stanislavski, particularly in this section as well. And I remember I was taught by a fantastic teacher in Guildford called Andrew Davidson, who's also been on here as well. And he talked about how because it's a bit of a kind of a joke really, but Stanislavski, because his Russian accent, when he came to like America, he said, you've got to break the text out into beats. And did he say beats, Beats, or bits, Bits? It's like, which one is it? And I think they're both kind of the same, but they're also very different as well. So which one is it, beats or bits, do you think he meant?
That's such an interesting point, because I don't know if you know, like there's like earlier translations of Stanislavski's work,
Okay.
and then there's kind of the later ones.
Uh-huh.
And so, you know, if anyone knows kind of Stanislavski technique things, there's like beats and there's objectives.
Mm,
And like you said, it's kind of this sort of mistranslation or something. I think actually the more accurate term is bits, because
bits, yeah.
he's talking about bits of like bits and pieces, right? Like I think that makes more sense than beats. So actually, like the later translation, they do translate it as bits and tasks rather than beats and objectives, which bits and tasks makes more sense. But because we've just been saying beats and objectives for so long, like
Yeah.
I don't think it's changed really. So, right, I don't know if you've ever heard anyone say bits and tasks.
It kind of, yeah, but I'd sort of my first introduction to Stanislavski is like you said, objectives, and there's super objective as well. So it's like my objective in the scene is to run to the end of the track. My super objective is to do it in record time, etc. One
Mhm.
example. But I feel like when you say bits, that makes a lot more sense. Like when we say bits or chunks, so essentially you're marking out the journey of your character and where you're going, essentially, which is important. So let's see. So information is more. Yeah. You also there's a great quote in that bit as well, saying from Helga and Tony Noyce, who say that is well organized is also better recalled as well. So, in other words, keep it like succinct as possible, and you'll remember it better. Right? Am I on the right lines there?
Yeah, just kind of reinforcing the idea that there is actual science behind why this
Yes.
works. Yeah, so it's interesting. Yeah, there is a couple out there, a researcher couple who has actually studied the cognition of actors, specifically about memorizing lines, actually.
Hmm.
And they've had several papers out there. They wrote this book. And yeah, that was one of the things that they concluded, where the organization of the script through breaking things down in this way is what helps with line memorization. Yeah, so organizing helps with cognition, memory, learning.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think you mentioned that science stuff, which is going to come up in later sections as well, because I think I'm probably going to mention this again a little bit later. But again, in Guildford, we were taught by one of our Larvan coaches was a girl called Rose Ryan. She's been on here twice, and she talks about again, like you say, it's. She said, I remember it so clearly. She said in one session, it's a scientific fact that if you move whilst you learn, if you learn your lines while walking, then your brain is more likely to retain that information because, and then there's another point you talk about as well, is that you can't learn your lines sitting down. You can't, you have to get up and move around, but more on that in just a second. So section two, which you call analyzing the script, and you said there are two camps to this as well. There's team rate memorization or team acting work, which I know is your preferred option. So why is the team acting work your preferred option?
Yeah. So I would say for a lot of actors, the default is to do rote memorization. And even a lot of acting teachers recommend rote memorization.
Yeah.
But there are some acting teachers where I am more in the camp of using your acting work to facilitate your memorization, using it more as like the vehicle for memorization.
Hmm.
And the reason for that is, again, it's like going back to the science and the cognition. When so there's a concept, it's called elaboration. And what it tells us is when when you're trying to learn something, if you make it meaningful by connecting it to other things,
Hmm.
by infusing it with more just connections, understanding, meaning, um, emotion, it helps with learning. It makes it stick better.
Hmm.
So when you think of rote memorization, like all of that is just gone. Like you're setting aside your best memorization tools. We have so many great tools as actors to elaborate a script to make it more meaningful.
Hmm.
We can analyze the subtext, the character, the infer all the interesting clues about the story. All of those things just bring it to life, give it more meaning, make it more rich, which makes it more sticky for the
Hmm.
lines.
Yeah.
But yeah, rote memorization, like all of that is gone. It's just bare, it's cold, and you're expected to learn it. And that's why it takes so long and why it doesn't really work that well, because it doesn't actually work with your brain. So I don't recommend doing it that way.
Yeah. Just to be clear, so rote memorization is when you're literally just letting it cold and like I think we say over here. I'm not sure if you say it in America. We call it speed running. So you're
Mm,
literally just going. So, for example, to be or not to be, like to be or not to be. That is the question. Whether to never the mind stuff that things over as a race of fortune. You're literally just blah 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 blah, blah just with words, no emotion, no nothing at all. But you say like when you're against the clock, you saying and team acting work is actually you say bring the emotions in to some degree to help you realize okay so this emotional delivery will help you remember the lines better in a way which I never thought of actually I always thought that for me rote memorization worked because it just helped me to just get the lines in, so I'm not worried about the next line, where I can just drill them and just do them in any sort of rate. Obviously, you don't go on stage and go to be or not to be. That is the question, because that'd just be silly. But but yeah, I think. How do you think? Like you just mentioned there, how does like bringing in some emotions help? This might sound like a silly question, but how does that help? Do you think?
Yeah, yeah. So bringing in the emotional piece, I mean, there's a few things I think of where it helps to make the lines, if you have an emotional component to it,
Hmm.
it, it makes it more memorable. Like it's
Hmm.
not just a meaningless word or phrase. The thing about it though is you don't want to kind of get stuck with a singular way of doing it or a singular emotion necessarily. But having that emotional piece where the line does make sense more or has a more meaning behind it can just help it stick. But is also a component too, I would say, where if you are always practicing without the emotion, but then at some point you do have to bring in the emotion
Cool.
and the acting, if you haven't practiced that part of it, you're going to have a really hard time actually making that jump. I don't know if you've experienced that or heard anybody who's experienced that before,
Hmm.
where if they're always just memorizing by rote and it's like, you know, like you said, cold, mechanical or whatever, but then it's like, okay, now we're doing the acting part. And then their lines go out the window because they haven't practiced that part, right? It's
Yeah.
because it's hard to like incorporate that when you haven't done that before. You know, how I describe it is like if you do it that way, you often create this massive gap
Mm.
between memorization and performance. And if you're delaying performance, you have this massive gap you have to like bridge. And you often actors they fall into that trap. They end up
Yeah.
crashing and burning because it's like they waited until they got on set to bring in the acting or whatever. And then now it's like, I don't know, I can't remember my lines, you know. You have to actually practice that piece of it. And the earlier in the process, the better. That's my opinion because it's only going to help you get off book sooner.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, for sure. No, I think one thing that our teacher Andrew instilled in us was just to write a bit like the classic Shakespearean days, where you would only write out your part. You wouldn't write out your scene partner's lines; it'd just be your bit. And I remember there was one very early rehearsal where I forgot that my scene partner had a line, and I kept overtreading that. We were going, "What?" And she was kept looking at me, going, Ollie, that doesn't make any sense. And I was like, what? I was like, no, I thought that was mine. And then I looked back over the script, like, oh, okay, yeah, that was my fault. So like you do, you get into that rhythm and you kind of skipped ahead a little bit. So that became, luckily, it wasn't a big problem, but you could see like, why that would be a little bit of an issue. Like to think you've just learned it going bang, 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 and then you bring that into the rehearsal room. And of course, that's not how you want to do it, but then that's what rehearsal's for, really. So I suppose one question I had for you, particularly in this section, was, in your opinion, in your experience, or like with yourself learning lines or with other actors or whatever, what kind of text do you feel is easier or harder to learn? Well, in fact, both. What's easier and what's harder, do you think?
When it comes to different types of text,
That's like any
is
kind of text. Like, what kind of text do you feel like is easier to get into people's brains, and what takes a little bit longer? Do you think, from your experience?
Yeah, like you said earlier, you mentioned like medical jargon, stuff like that.
Oh
That's a
God, yeah.
lot harder to
Oof.
memorize. Yeah,
Yeah.
stuff like legal stuff where again, the more abstract, the more cold and technical it is, the harder it is to memorize. Um, yeah, the more emotional, the more concrete, the
Yeah.
more image heavy, the easier it is. That's actually part of why I find Shakespeare is actually easier to memorize
Mm.
than contemporary text. I don't know if you feel that way,
Yeah.
but that was always my experience, which I found kind of strange because you would think that Shakespeare would be harder because the language is kind of more removed to modern language, but I found that because it's so like rich in imagery and
Yeah.
rhythm and things like that, that I found it was actually easier. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember one time thinking Shakespeare would be like impossible to learn because you're just, I mean, because it's like Elizabethan English, it's a whole different thing. But then once you get into it, and like you say, like the imagery and, and actually, particularly with verses, with verse speeches, like, I suppose like To Be or Not to Be, or like or Iago's got some fantastic stuff, or Othello, etc. You see like the speech and how it's laid out, so you can see like at the end of each line you take like a little breath or like another jump to the next thought, and then as soon as like you follow, Shakespeare's actually showing you how to do it pretty much, and then like a line about a certain image will just land and you'll just go, that's that's what he's banging on about. And and it's stunning, but more on Shakespeare a bit later. But
Yeah.
but you say this is effective for particularly like the short time frame, because you
Mhm.
literally, like, again, going off that Shakespeare thing, there you've got emotions, images, and therefore that will help you propel you to getting the lines stuck in your brain, right?
Yes, yes. Images are especially compelling for the human brain, probably evolutionary reasons.
Hmm.
This was something that people have figured out thousands of years ago. So there's a certain set of techniques that you can use using the power of imagery that can help with memorization.
Hmm.
So that's part of my method as well. I don't know if we're stepping into talking about that just yet, or if you had more you wanted to talk about.
Like, if there's any more that you feel like you want to talk about imagery wise, I mean, is there anything else that you feel like you want to say?
Um, just that I guess this component, um, it's based on a set of techniques. Like I mentioned, they go back thousands of years
Sure.
to at least the ancient Greeks, Romans. But they're not used as much today because, we have technology, we have writing now. We don't use our memories as much. But there's a subculture out there of people who keep these techniques alive and they compete in tournaments. They're memory athletes. And if you ever see these people perform, they're amazing. They can do things like memorize an entire deck of cards like super quickly, or hundreds of names and faces. Like these are the events that they like compete in. It's kind of interesting. But they're actually not, super geniuses or anything like that.
Mm.
They're just using these techniques that really enhance their ability to remember things. So it's really interesting, the that component of things. So I've incorporated some of that into my memorization method as well.
Yeah, and I think you also say that you encourage people to, like, if you get stuck in this one in particular, you encourage them to just to play around with multiple interpretations. You say, like, one, try a different emotion on here, see if it works. Try saying that line just a little bit different with a different emotion. Maybe say that line you initially thought was being angry, but then you could change that to being frustrated or something, or maybe just instead of angered, more resigned. So there's like a big change in a way, and then you find which one works for you, right?
Yeah, that's something you can play with. Playing around with different interpretations and different ways of playing the scene is really important to maintain flexibility with your memorization. So that's actually a piece where, people that are really recommending rote memorization,
Hmm.
uh, they do that mainly because their argument is that if you incorporate the acting, that you can get stuck in
Hmm.
one way of playing the scene. And you need that flexibility as you're exploring the script and you're rehearsing and things.
Hmm.
And that is important. Like that is a legitimate concern. So the way around that is to really make sure you're playing around with different interpretations, especially early on in the process. Like if you're doing theater or whatever,
Hmm.
before the blocking has been set, that's usually, coming kind of later. Being able to play around, even when you're just rehearsing by yourself, is important. But still, I still say incorporate the acting, but just play with different ways of doing the acting,
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so yeah, so that's an important piece to maintain flexibility. Yeah.
yeah. And I think another one is you also have three ways to memorize lines, particularly in this section as well. You talked about um, causal. I never heard this word before. Causal triggers. Did I say that right?
Yeah, causal triggers. Yeah.
Causal triggers.
Just
Yeah.
like, mhm.
Yeah. Exact wording and patterns and breaks in patterns. So causal triggers. You like a good way of sort of memorizing lines is thinking what happens right before this line. The exact wording is why does your character say it in this way? And patterns and breaks in patterns. So repeated phrases or change in rhythms. So why did they say all these things? And these are really good things to do because I remember someone telling me once, think about where's your character been before this? Where have they come from? Have they literally just run from the track? Have they just burst into the room to talk about some news? Have they come from, sadly, as a sad topic, like a wake or something? Where have they come from? And that helps you to think, okay, so why would they open with that line? And that's a good way of doing it. So, and I think that's a good lead on to like, there's a whole other world, even though it's not the words that you're saying, but think about the outer context of where your character has been. I mean, that's a huge part of learning lines, don't you think?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, so that causal trigger piece, it's really thinking about kind of the logic, cause and effect logic that is linked together throughout the entire script.
Yeah.
And having that in your mind, uh, I think in my course, I call it creating a causal chain. And that's actually taken from those two researchers. I
Yeah.
think they called it that in their papers.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's looking at why am I saying this? Because there's a reason that happened right before it, right? So it's like looking at, I think there was actually a book that kind of talked about this. What was it? It was called like Backwards and Forwards. Have you ever seen
No,
that
no.
book?
Backwards
I
and
think it's
forwards.
like a
Okay.
really thin book about acting, but I think in that book they call it triggers and heaps. So it's
Hmm.
just different metaphors where they're talking about uh, like if you shoot a gun and it causes something to fall, it's a heap, and then so it's the entire play is a series of triggers and heaps.
Mm.
So if you think about it that way, um, finding the trigger and the heap, if you want to call it that, the cause and the effect, basically,
Hmm.
is gives you something to anchor your memorization to,
Mm.
um, because it gives you a why. If you're kind of in a moment and it's like, oh, what comes next? You're often missing that component. That's like a sign that you're missing something there.
Yeah.
You're not quite understanding the cause of your next line. Because once you have that, it's like it's like it's linked in and it becomes more natural that it or comes out of you.
Mm.
Uh yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's a good point because I think a lot of people sort of think, well, why am I stumbling with this next bit? And you think, oh, maybe, that's the next bit to understand. That's the next bit to look at and research and think, what am I missing here? And I
Mhm.
think I was lucky enough to interview a director earlier this year called Yael Farber. She's done a lot of work in London, particularly in the theatre. And she's always one thing she instills in her actors is to say keep looking, just keep looking. Even on that last performance, you pick up that script and you just you maybe not look at the script or whatever it is you want to do, but you look at your character, look at your lines and go, is there something else here that I've missed? Is there one scene throughout this whole run which I'm still not quite sure about and everything else? Then you're going to hear these stories of like some of the great actors I imagine Broadway as well, but in London especially, that they wake up like 6 months after a run, they wake up in the middle of the night and they go, oh, that's how you play that scene.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no. So it's almost like, and I think also a key component is to say that obviously when you are against the clock, everything, and when you are line learning at a leisurely pace is not to stress about it too much. Just relax into it and take your time more than anything, right?
Absolutely. So, yeah, a couple things there.
Yeah.
So when I love this piece of, yeah, looking at those moments. Um, when I'm working privately with people, when I'm doing private coaching,
Yeah.
I actually love when people make mistakes because I love that opportunity. I love mistakes. I think people should embrace mistakes a lot more in their process because it's an opportunity. It shows you, oh, there's something there to look at. There's something more to explore there. And I love doing that and like figuring out, oh, what are we missing in this moment? Like we're not quite getting the causal trigger, or there's often like a component that like, oh, there's like a physical component or something that you aren't doing, and if you do that, then the line is going to stick better. Um, yeah, so embrace, yeah, that's what popped up for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Y- yeah, the just embracing mistakes to use that as like it's like your magnifying glass. It's like your wayfinder. Like when you make a mistake, it's like, aha, that's what I need to explore over there, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think in the way the
yeah.
director goes, okay, so why would he say that? Why would she do that? Why would she say that bit there? And you go, because they want to do this or something, and then your brain's like, okay, maybe we need to figure this out. But no, but I think in every show, like people say like an and instead of an or a they instead of them, all that kind of stuff. But but it's obviously like when you are learning lines, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to say the wrong line, or you'll get halfway through a speech and you go, shit, and your brain just goes, nope, I don't know my words. Pick up your script again and try again, all that stuff. And it's like anything. It's like a journey towards knowing it. That's how you gotta fuck up. You gotta make mistakes. You're gonna say the wrong lines. And embrace it. Embrace failure and all that stuff. There's something that a lot of people on this acting journey of ours say constantly, and it's almost like a cliche, but it's true. It's true.
Mhm.
Just embrace it.
Right.
And
And embracing it earlier, you
mm,
get past it earlier, right? You can get past it. You just have to know that's part of the process and that
mm.
you will get past it at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So, section three is imagine and get up and act. And this is something we were talking about earlier. Um, exercise by memory athletes. And this is also what you mentioned earlier, as well as in your masterclass. You got athletes out there whose gift is just learning things so much. And you give an example of the girl who worked in IKEA who learnt the entire catalog. Just, I mean, that's insane.
Right, right. Yeah. So her name is Yanja Wintersoul, and she, for some reason, memorized the entire IKEA catalog, all of the details, like all of the furniture and all of the people in the photos and everything. And yeah, there's videos of her online where she's talking about how she did it, and like they're quizzing her on it, like page 56, like what's on there, or whatever. And yeah, it's because again, she's using this set of techniques that use the power of imagery and make it fun. Like the way she described it, it was like actually like fun. It makes it fun to memorize an IKEA catalog. Um, but yeah, that's the power of what these things can do.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think there's another thing. So yeah, we talk about imagery and stuff, and you talk about spatial geography as well. Having just having like the right environment to do it. And you're saying also words become images, and you use the Great Gatsby as an example, but you call it the Great Catsby. So what was your sort of explaining about how was that theory born?
Yeah, yeah. So that's like one of the ways that you can transform um, information that is kind of harder to remember into images that are easier to remember, is where you can kind of substitute words that are similar sounding,
Hmm.
that are more concrete. So yeah, I gave that little example in the class. And yeah, so the Great Gatsby, you can imagine like a cheese grater with a cat and a bee on its head or something. And it just makes it kind of silly. It makes it more fun. And it's just like a way to make it more memorable.
Mhm.
If for some reason you had some trouble remembering that title
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think also is it something we talked about it before, which was is that there's a quote here, whereas I'll do that a bit later. But you're saying get up quicker, get up on your feet and start walking and talking. And I've spoken about this on a previous episode. I think it was my third ever episode. I spoke to an actor called Christian, amazing guy, and he said always learn your lines standing up. Because then, if you learn them sitting down, you go great. Then you stand up, and you talk about this in your masterclass as well. And then suddenly your brain goes, "Wait, walking and talking at the same time? No, no, I'm not. Hang on, I don't know how to compute this." But and then on another episode with Rebecca, I talked about how she said I was learning Lady Macbeth. I was sitting down. I was amazing as Lady Macbeth. I got up, and I didn't know what to do. I don't know what to do. My brain just went gone, blank completely. And you're going, yeah. And that, like I said earlier with Rose, it's like it's scientific fact that walking prompts memories and stuff. I mean, and you talked about, is it state dependent learning as well? Yeah. What's just explain a bit more about that state dependent learning.
Yeah, so that's the explanation for that phenomenon. So state dependent learning, it's this cognitive principle of whenever we're learning something, the environment that we learned it in
Hmm.
becomes encoded into the memory. It's part of the memory. So they actually have done like a lot of different studies on this phenomenon where like different states, like so whatever state you were in when you learned something, you're you can recall those things better if you are in the same environment again versus if you're in a different environment. So like I recall this study they did where they made some people memorize like a list of words while they were like scuba diving
Mm.
underwater.
Ah.
And then like they tested them above water versus in the water again. And the people that if they learned it underwater and they're tested underwater, they recall they perform better than if
Wow.
they learned it underwater and are tested above water. Yeah. So yeah, weird things like that. So in the context of acting, like you said, if you memorized your lines while you're just relaxing on the couch, but then suddenly you're getting up or you have to do your self-tape, you're in your self-tape environment, that's a completely different environment than just like laying down on your couch. So that's what causes blanking. So then you're like, wait, it's gone for some reason. And that's why, because it's a completely different environment. So it's important if you can do it in the same environment or somehow make it similar or like recreate it in some capacity that's going to be helpful for you.
Yeah, and I just remembered another thing that Andrew said to us was, and again, just we were just talking about, fucking up and failing. It's like when you are in that process of learning lines. I remember one thing he said in our episode was, always never try and do opening night on day one of rehearsals. Because you still get some people come to rehearsals and they're off book, but they might need a prompt from time to time. But like, is that additional, not adding any more pressure on yourself at all to say, yeah, you know your stuff now. Now you're adding flesh to the bones and everything, and so don't put too much pressure on yourself to do opening night on day one of rehearsals because then it's a journey after that, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Um, yeah, to
Yeah.
keep that component open. Mhm.
Yeah, definitely. And I think another thing you mentioned as well was you mentioned a client of yours did a mock audition as well. And I think you said that this girl you had was put herself on Zoom and then had someone else be another Zoom window to prompt her lines and everything. She did it about two or three times. And then I think that was brilliant because then she must have got to a place where she was so relaxed and so knew exactly what she was doing. And then once she did the tape, then it was easy. And she was like, "Yeah, I'm really happy with that." And then she booked the job as well, didn't she?
Yes, yes, exactly. So I recommend that to people now. And Yeah, like if you think about that scenario of doing a Zoom audition, there's a
Mm,
lot of weird components to that you kind of want to practice with that and get used to that before you do the actual thing. Because, like, yeah, you're doing it with a screen. You want to practice with your eyeline, you might want to have your lighting, like all of those components, making sure you practice with that helps you get comfortable with that and get settled with that so that it's not like some brand new element on the day. And so now you're like, what do I do? And it's something that can kind of like be too new or too shocking or whatever, whatever you can do to just make it comfortable for yourself and familiar for yourself
mm,
can help really calm nerves and make it go smoothly. So
yeah.
yeah, like Zoom auditions are so like there's this technical thing going on, like practice the technical stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think you also mentioned in there as well. I think another point where sometimes I think you're so up against it. Sometimes, and I've done this myself, where you've got your camera on your tripod there, and then you've got your blank like white wall behind you, but then stuck to the wall is your script. And sometimes if you're really like we were talking about earlier, like this big like doctor jargon or legal talk or something, like if you really really are up against it, you've literally got half an hour to do it. And I know that's not something that you talked about too much, but would you say that in situations like that, just look, whatever we have to do, we have to get it done now, and this is what we got to do.
Yeah, I mean, some people they're able to manage it that way. Yeah, either using a teleprompter or like sticking something up off screen. I mean, my recommendation is to do that as little as possible
Yeah,
if you
yeah, yeah.
can, because the performance is just going to be better if you're completely off book and if they can't tell that your eye is going towards a script or something. But the thing is, I have seen casting directors talk about the importance of line memorization because they see it over and over again
Mm,
that it can kill an audition if you're up here and then suddenly you're dropping down or
mm,
you're looking like you're reading something off to the side. And I mean, I have heard from casting directors that said they can tell, like they can tell if you're reading something. They can tell if you're actually off book or if you're not. Um, so I mean, there is that piece. Like, uh, I mean, I do understand. Like sometimes you got to do what you got to do,
mm.
but if you do have the right techniques that can kind of support you in those quick turnarounds, you maybe don't have to rely on that as much.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, sometimes, you want to be as authentic as possible, but sometimes no needs must in this thing. But and that brings us on to the final step, number four, which you call test and strengthen. And you talk about something called retrieval practice, which is recalling lines and speaking them out loud, and also having a fluency. Yeah, this is what I want to talk to you about, the fluency illusion. So explain a bit more about that.
Yeah, yeah. So retrieval practice, it goes by a few different names. It's sometimes called active recall or the testing effect. Um, and it's just this phenomenon that when you are challenging yourself to recall something from your memory, actually to get it from your memory, the retrieving from your memory and getting it out,
Yeah.
the act of that effortfulness of doing that strengthens memories. And so that is in contrast to just rereading something on the page over and over. That does not have the same effect.
Mhm.
That is much weaker. If you're just sitting, reading, rereading over and over, that's not as helpful. Um, and the reason for that is it's too passive. Again, like you need to be more effortful with your mind for memories to be strengthened. And the fluency illusion is this component of that where the reason why passively rereading is not as effective is you can get caught in something called the fluency illusion,
Mm-hmm.
where when your mind recognizes something, it gives you this sense that you know it, but you actually don't. So, so you don't realize, your memory is actually weak for this thing. So you think, oh, I do recognize these lines on the page. I probably know it. But then when you're actually forced to actually perform it, you're not going to have it in your mind because your memories haven't actually been strengthened on it. So recognizing something is not the same as knowing something.
Mm-hmm.
And for you to really know it, you to know that you know something, you have to test yourself on
Mm.
it. And yeah, so and this is with everything. Like it would be good in school to have a pre-test before an actual test, for example.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, do it again, back to the mock audition for before a real
Yeah.
audition.
Yeah.
That is helpful.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, it's almost like just having that 100% confirmation that it's there. Don't, it's, yeah, I know it, I know it, I know it. And then you get up and then you go, I've seen it like a few times. People get up and they go, and suddenly they go, oh, wait, hang on a minute. Wait, let me just have a look again. Okay, yeah, we're good. But then, but yeah, no, it's a weird thing, isn't it? Sometimes, but bizarrely, it's like, but once you've got it, once you've got all your lines in your head, then you look back and think, oh, because that wasn't so bad, that wasn't so hard. What was I thinking about? But then, of course, you don't realize the hours that you put in to get to that point. And I don't know about you, but when I go and see like a show where it's just a two-hander, where it's just two people on stage, or a one-person show, and they've got all those lines and everything, and I think to myself, like the hours that's been put in, like you see it just for 2 hours and the show's over, then you go and have your dinner, but you don't realize the hours that those two or that one person or those three people, however it is, a small cast, have put in to get all those lines in their head. And you think, oh, no, not just in the head, but in the body as well. And, it just makes you really appreciate these guys, just going out there by themselves or just with one other person. And then you go, oh, wow. Wow, it's just, yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but do you get that as well when you see like a one person show or a two-hand and you go, just wow, that's it's the hours that
Yeah.
they've put in, right?
Yeah, for sure. And even like a one person show, if they wrote it themselves or it's like a autobiographical sort of thing, it's like sometimes it took years of development for them to do that material and refine that material. And
Mm,
um, yeah, there's so much trust that has to go into, especially like the two-hander type shows. And um, yeah, that is kind of the magic, right, of
mm.
acting where they make it look easy on stage, but you don't even know underneath it there's this like massive iceberg of preparation that's like holding up the entire thing.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, it
yeah.
is pretty cool.
It's funny. I remember speaking to another person who's been on here a few times called Harry Burton, and he said, "Look, it's like the mindset of an actor when you're on stage is like, okay, look, like, okay, right, I know, okay, I know what my next line is. I'm saying this bit here. I know what comes next. Okay, now I've got to be at this point here, at this lighting change. I've got to be this, that, and the other. I've got to be over here, this, that, and the other. And I'm just trying to stay calm the whole fucking time. While the director, on top of all that, is going, enjoy yourself, have fun. It's like it's a constant, like you said, it's like an iceberg of like this. You're constantly like that, but you know. And again, it's just another thing that jumped out from watching just your masterclass, and speaking today is just preparation is so key to even learning your lines. Prepare yourself for learning your lines and just getting so much on that. And I think this goes back to something we talked about earlier, which was being relaxed. And you talked about spaced repetition as well, which is as you talked about, we retain information better when we revisit stuff rather than trying to drill it all in one session. And you had this sort of chart where you say you increase the time you go back to your monologue or your script after. So the first time you go back to it is right after you've started learning. The second time is after 15 and 20 minutes. The third time is after 2 hours. Fourth time after 6 hours. And the fifth, you come back to it the next day and
Hmm.
give you that space and time for it to simmer away in your brain. I think that's a really, really good point. I mean, just explain a bit more about how important that is.
Yeah, yeah. So spaced repetition, again, it's another like very, very established cognitive finding where when we learn something, if you revisit it in spaced intervals, so it's basically taking strategic breaks.
Yeah.
So I gave an example of some intervals that you could use, but those don't, you don't have to use those exact ones. You can kind of figure out what would work for you based on when your deadline is, when you really want to be off book. But the idea is that you take these strategic breaks and you gradually increase how big the break is. And that is a lot more effective than just cramming continuously. Because we kind of have this idea, it's counterintuitive. We have this idea that if you just put in more hours, you just run lines as much as you can, like constantly, that you'll get better recall and retention.
Yeah.
But actually, if you space it out, if you take these strategic breaks, you can retain lines, you can increase retention. This is really about retention
Hmm.
for a lot longer. So doing this, it strengthens memories
Hmm.
and makes them deeper. So it's again like a well-known finding where I, if people know any like learning apps out there,
Hmm.
like language learning apps or uh, uh, like there's ones like Anki that have they're flashcard apps
Yeah. Yeah.
where they incorporate spaced repetition in this because they know that this works. They do what's called like spaced repetition systems. So it's like based on, for example, like with flashcards, if you're trying to learn vocabulary for like a new language or something,
Hmm.
you test yourself on a word or something, and if you got it right, you tell them, "Yeah, I got it right. I was very confident." And so then it knows to give you an interval for that that is like a little longer because you know it really well. You don't
Hmm.
have to revisit it right away. But if you got it wrong, they're going to show you that that flashcard
Hmm.
again sooner. So it makes your practice more efficient. Um, yeah, and it strengthens memories more efficiently this way.
Yeah, and I think how important it is just to relax and take a break, from time to time, because then, you try a scene again, again, and then you're like, okay, right, I need to stop now because otherwise I'll just drive myself insane, and then so you revisit it like maybe after half an hour or so, and I don't know about you, but like sometimes you leave it that time and then you go for it again, and then suddenly it's all there.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
there is a component of that as well, that focus work and breaks, they go hand in hand. You actually need both for proper learning. Again, it's like I don't know if it's a societal thing, cultural thing, or whatever. We just have this idea that like you just need to work hard and uh, that's how you learn things. But no, if you can pair these things together and use it strategically, it's actually really important to have both components, especially for creative
Mm.
endeavors. That break time, um, that's when kind of the creative connections are happening kind of behind the scenes in a subconscious sort of way. And that's when certain epiphanies can happen, or, like a eureka moment, like, aha, I get it now. Like that's what happens when you do the focus work, then you take a strategic break. Yeah, it's kind of a magical pairing.
Yeah, I think there was I think Anthony Hopkins talked about this as well. I think he was interviewed by one of your guys out there's a Charlie Rose, who you've got out
Oh,
there. Yeah, I think he gave an interview, this was a few years ago, but he said like when you read a script and then I think I heard somewhere that he reads his scripts like over 100 times. No, it doesn't try and learn it, so he just reads it 100 times. And he just allows all this information to go in here, and he says you feed it into your computer, and then just allow it to decode it, and then to figure stuff out. And like you say, that eureka moment could come purely from instinct, or something that goes, that scene when I'm in this scene with my wife, and then suddenly I have to say that big thing, and it goes bang, and then suddenly it's there. So it's almost like trusting that the lines to go into your body and into your brain, just you know, we say it many times in this thing, but beauty happens when you least expect it, and it just goes like there in front of you to do it, and just allow the thoughts to happen really. And so yeah, and that's another thing. And then there's a brilliant thing at the end where you go, three things that you don't need to do in summary for this thing, and one of them was, don't drill your lines until your brain goes numb. You don't need to be a genius, and you don't need a ton of time either as well. So you've got, it's like all these things that you think you need, you don't, right?
Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah, that's my message for everything um, that you can take less time. It doesn't have to be as difficult, and yeah, and that you don't have to have like a super genius mind. That if you employ these strategies, it can really reduce the load a lot
Mm.
because you're working with how your brain learns best.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely brilliant. It's like I said earlier. I'm not just saying that because you're here. It's a really cool, in-depth masterclass, and it really opens your eyes to a lot of things. And actually, you go, oh, so you can do this. You can learn your lines on a short time frame, and then of course, not only just deliver the lines to the camera like but you actually with a proposal for yourself of who the character can be, with emotions and with objectives and bits, bits, rather than beats, and yeah, then also from that, like I said in the intro, people go access this, then you also get access to your courses, which they will receive $100 discount as well. So where can people find you and your courses?
Yeah, my website is offbookit.com. They can find links there to join the masterclass. It gives them this discount if they want to join the course.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can find all my information there. I'm also on Instagram. My handle is at offbookit.
Brilliant. And I've just got a few more things left for you today, Joyce. So what would you say is that? So obviously, this might sound like a bit like a marketing interview kind of question now, but why should people come to you? What can you? How can you help people?
Uh, I would say I actually don't know of anybody else out there who
Yeah,
specializes
exactly. You're
in
you're into a
this.
very good market as well. It's a big opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say I don't think there's anyone out there that has this particular
Yeah.
skill set. So if this is a difficulty for you, I've really done the work to really figure out what works and what doesn't, specifically for line memorization and for actors. I would say there are memory experts out there, but they are usually more like general. They're kind of just helping
Yeah.
people kind of improve their memories generally. And I mean, they're great. I find them really inspirational, but I do think there is something to be said about there's something different about memorizing dramatic text and for the purpose of performance. And I do bring that experience of knowing what it's like to be an actor and what it's like to dive into a script and try to bring it to life. It is a very different thing from just memorizing facts or trying to remember your to-do list or something, you know. So I think that marriage of things is really important to my process. I'm always thinking of performance first. That's always where I'm grounded when it
Mm,
comes to my memorization technique. Like I'm always thinking this is for a better performance.
mm.
So yeah, I don't know of anyone else out there
Yeah.
who does what I do.
No, 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 no. You've entered a very good market. There's, like you say, there's no one else like there out there like you for this, and which is fantastic. You're leading a. Who knows? You might start the new revolution. So
Yeah.
there'll be loads of copycats around you, but you be the OG. But no, you mentioned earlier about one thing I talked about was Shakespeare as well. Now, the first thing I've got to ask you, I mean, for any Shakespeare lover, this might be a tough question, but what's your favorite speech?
Oh, oh Lord. Oh my. This is tough. I don't know if I have a favorite speech. I don't know if ever
One of your
anyone's
favorites. Yeah, yeah, one
ever
of your
asked me
favorites.
before. Hmm, I have to think about it. I mean, there's such great ones from Hamlet. I mean, I learned ones like from Romeo and Juliet when I was in school. Um, yeah, I'd have to think about it. I'm not sure. I don't have one like that's like readily off the top of my head.
No, no, no,
I'm
it's okay.
sorry. I wish I had one,
No, it's
but
okay.
I do love. Uh, yeah, I'd have to think about it. It's hard for me. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I love so many of the plays. Yeah, I Twelfth Night and Midsummer and I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
Yeah. No, no, it's all good. No, I
Do you
mean,
have a favorite speech? Which's your favorite one?
God, so many, so many. But the first one that jumps out at me right now is I remember there was funny when it was 2012 and when we had the Olympics over here, the RSC, the Royal Shakespeare Company, they put all the plays on, but they put all of them in a different like different country, and of course all the countries were participating in the Olympics as well. So
Oh wow, they put on
I
all of
think
Shakespeare's plays.
I think so, pretty much all of them. Well, a good chunk of them anyway. I'm probably getting that wrong, but they did. They put Much Ado About Nothing in India, and they put Julius Caesar in Africa, and I'm not sure which, but maybe South Africa. I'm not sure, but it was heavily based off like some dictatorships that have been there, etc. And they released it on DVD, which you can get online and all that stuff. And even now, or is it online now? It might be online. Oh, one or two. Anyway, people can get access to it. But there's the speech which Mark Antony has, the Dogs of War speech, and just if anyone doesn't, I can't remember all of it, but um, oh no, my mind's just gone blank. It talks about her. Shall in these confines with a monarch's voice cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war, so that this foul deed shall smell above the earth with carrion men groaning for burial. You're like,
Ooh.
you're like, wow. I remember there was an act, I can't remember his name, but we watched the recording of that up to that point, and our lecturer stopped us after that bit. I was like, no, what does he have next? But I remember seeing it and that speech and hearing the language and hearing how the actor did it. And honestly, I was just in my chair going, oh my God,
Yeah.
what is this speech? What is, and he walked out of it. I remember saying to someone at the time, like, God, Shakespeare, he was a clever bastard, wasn't he? He's a clever, clever guy. Wow, yeah. But there's just
It's
something.
magical. Yeah.
It's, oh, it's pure magic. And of course, Hamlet as well. Like to be or not to be. Like oh, this too solid flesh would melt. And Iago's got some great stuff. And I mean, there's one Othello one which just he says, "Thus do I blow to heaven, arise, black vengeance from my hollow cell." Yield up, all crown and love and tyrannous hate swell bosom with thy fraught as if aspects tongues, and you're like image there all the time, and makes you realize how easy. And fun enough, you talked as well about how you think Shakespeare is a great line learning tool as well. So, and you say, I'm probably answering my own question here, but because of all the imagery and of course what it gives you, is that what you think makes it so easy to learn?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the things that you mentioned, I think you mentioned earlier how, because he's just a genius at crafting the speeches where it makes sense kind of where the line of thought is kind of going,
Yeah,
but then also so that carries you as well, but also like there's so many clues in the language, the meter and everything that is so helpful to you as an actor because it gives you clues on how to play it, right? Like yeah, the rhythm gives you clues to like what's going on with the character, like their emotional state and like what's going on in their head and yeah, so it's like the imagery, the rhythm, the poetry, the sound elements, um, all of that stuff is amazing for memorization. Like tapping into all of those things just like lifts it completely.
Yeah.
Um, and it's so like you're describing, like watching that guy give that speech. Yeah, like when you see a master do a Shakespeare speech, it's so magical. Like, yeah, I mean, just going online and seeing, I think I remember I saw James Earl Jones do a
Mm.
speech from Othello, and he performed it. He wasn't doing it in a production. He was just
Yeah.
performing it as part of this like performance series at the White House. So
Hmm.
it was like the Obamas were like in the audience, and there was like
Oh
audience
wow.
of people that were watching this, and he was just doing this speech, and he was just a master at it, and it just like brought it to life in a way that was like so, again, magical.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I love seeing like, yeah, like Ray Fiennes, like
Yeah. He's very good.
I think he did like a Richard III speech. I remember seeing that like online. It was like just amazing.
Mm. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, you know, James Earl Jones. I mean, to see James, I mean, obviously, sadly, he's no longer with us. But you know, if he was still with us and he was playing Othello, I would pay good money to go and watch that. I mean, wow. I mean, he's. I'm not sure. There's a classic clip of him at the Tonys. Actually, do you know the play Fences at
Mm-hmm.
all? And he has that scene where he talks to his son, where he says, I ain't got to like you. Who in the hell ever said I've got to like you?" And he's like, "Oh my God, you're talking to your son here about that." But the way he does it, you can see, you don't see James Earl Jones. You see a dad who just goes, "No, it's not. It's my duty to take care of you. There's no love here. I've got to take care of you. It's what I do. You know,
Mm-hmm.
all the love stuff. You know, your mum does all that. You know, don't look at for me for that sort of thing. You know, but you see him, yeah." But I
Yeah.
remember, yeah, Ray Fiennes is a good one. Yeah, I think he did Macbeth over here a couple last year or the year before. He's very good. Yeah, but it's just something about the language. You're just yeah. And I thought, funny enough, there's do you know the opening of Henry V, the prologue, "Oh, for a muse of fire." I mean, just that first
Yeah.
line, "Oh, for
Hmm.
a muse of
Of
fire."
fire. Yeah. Yeah. I remember we had to do that speech for like a voice class
Oh
in
yeah.
school. Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God. I mean, and of course, we're gonna geek out over Shakespeare now, aren't we? But there's another. I remember because I studied Macbeth for A level actually, which is like I don't know what the equivalent is in America, but you know, it's like the exams you do before you go to college or university. So that if you do well in these exams, then the university approves, then you can go. I'm not sure what the American equivalent is, but
Maybe the SAT or
yeah,
ACT.
SAT, like the exams you do to get yourself into college or go to
Hmm.
university. Yeah, and we studied Macbeth for that, and just that opening, the witch's chant. I mean, I still remember it even now. "Fair is foul, and foul is fair. Hover through the fog and filthy air." And I remember just in class going, "Oh my God, awesome!" Yeah. Oh God, everyone else was impressed by like Spider-Man or what Grand Theft Auto or something, and I was there geeking out over Shakespeare, you know, just all that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, actually, let me ask you this: right, is there if there's a Shakespearean part that you'd love to play one day, who would it be?
Oh, wow. I love Macbeth, actually.
Oh yeah,
Macbeth is like
it's
probably my favorite
it's good. It's
Shakespeare
good.
play. And I remember I did like a Lady Macbeth monologue
Mm,
when I was in school. That was like yeah, just like spooky and
mm. Which one was it?
really
The
cool. It was
Unsexed here one?
it actually wasn't like one of the verse ones. It was the out spot uh
Oh, out
part.
down
Yeah, yeah.
spot.
Out
Yes.
damn spot. Yeah, yeah. Um but so maybe it would be Lady Macbeth.
Mm, mm.
Maybe at some point. I don't know.
Yeah, she's. It's funny because
Probably a
she.
little too young for it right now, maybe, but
Hey, one day. No, there's yeah, she's funny because she's actually the villain of the piece, isn't she?
yeah.
She's the one who
Yeah.
drives everything. Obviously, Macbeth does the deed, as he says, but you know, she's the one behind it, and I just pushing him on. Yeah.
Yeah, that relationship, that dark relationship. There's something about that play that is something else. Yeah, I really love the movie with Marion Cotillard and what's his name, Michael Fassbender. That version was
Oh
like,
yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah, came out like some years ago, but I remember
yeah,
I really liked that version. I mean, there's so many versions out there, but yeah.
yeah. If you can, there's a version available online now of a younger Ian McKellen and a young Judi Dench doing
Ah,
it. Have you seen that one?
oh, that would be brilliant. I think I've seen parts of it. I
Yeah.
kind of remember. Yeah, I remember like the part she's the when she's sleepwalking, that
Mm,
scene again, and she's like kind of like rubbing her hands and like licking them, sort of like they're, yeah, I just remember that image
yeah.
from that. Yeah.
Yeah, and also that there's another thing. Oh God, we could talk about this for another 2 hours, I think. But there's this. I don't know, like when you go to see like Macbeth or something, and I say if you were directing it, would
Mm.
you put Banquo's ghost in the scene, or would you leave an empty chair?
Oh,
Hmm.
oh, that's so interesting. Like, what's the choice?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it would depend on like the production. Like if you're doing kind of lots of effects and stuff, if you got a really good makeup artist or something, and can make them really bloody or but if it's like maybe like a more stripped down version where it's
Mm,
kind of bare and simplistic, um, it might be more compelling if it's just empty because
mm.
it's more imaginative. Ooh.
Yeah, I feel
So
like
yeah, what do you think?
I like seeing Banquo's ghost. I can't lie. I like seeing him.
You
Yeah.
like the gore?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember there was some guys who were in the year above me at well, no, they weren't the year above me. They were there at the same time. They were third years. I was a master's student, and they did Macbeth. And Banquo came out. I remember the guy called Will played him, and he was like a forceful Banquo. He just walked on stage. His face was covered in like stage blood and stuff, and just pointing at him like with that look to say, "You'll get what's coming for you," and all that sort of thing. Yeah, I always like seeing it, but. Little spoiler, actually. Sorry, the Ian McKellen one. You don't see Banquo, and you actually see Ian the camera closing up and Ian McKellen just going absolutely crazy, and like he's foaming at the mouth, and he's just going, "Thou cannot say I did it," and just going properly like, and you're thinking, "Wow, here's a man just completely falling to pieces." And of course, that's the scene where she's like, "Oh, just ignore him. He's fine. He's fine. He's fine. He's fine. Don't worry about it." It's like he's not fine. He's seen a ghost, And yeah, oh God, it's brilliant, isn't it? But I don't know, well, what other parts do you think you'd like to do other than Lady Macbeth?
Hmm. Other dream Shakespeare roles,
Is that like
maybe.
Puck's a good one? I think Puck's a
Oh,
lovely role.
Yeah, Puck is great. I actually played Festi in
Did you?
Twelfth Night, so I did play like a kind of clown-ish role, even though Festi's supposed to be a guy. But in this particular production, they cast me as that role. So yeah, Puck is super fun. Yeah,
Mm.
the roles in Midsummer, maybe like Rosalind. Um, Twelfth Night is great. Like, yeah, the other roles in Twelfth Night are great too.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, yeah. Do you have like a list of roles, like best Shakespeare roles?
Oh,
Um,
yeah, every male part. No, not every male part. No, I mean, I think I'd love to play, yeah, Macbeth. I'd love to do Hamlet, Julius, Caesar. Yeah, yeah, I do Caesar. He's got some nice stuff. But Mark Antony, that's your
it's the one you.
ticket. That's the one. Yeah. Oh, there's so many. I mean, I tell you what, I love the Merry Wives of Windsor as well. That play is so funny. It's so funny. I recommend that one very, very highly. But oh, Joyce, we could
Or
probably.
maybe like Beatrice.
Oh, Beatrice is a
It,
great one. A great one.
yeah.
She's got some. I mean, the scenes in Much Ado where the two of them are like bouncing off each other, her and Benedict, and they're like trading insults and everything. Oh, I
Yeah. Oh,
love
that's
that scene.
such a fun role. I saw that a production of that in Oregon last
Mm,
summer, and it was so fun. I was like, oh, that's such a great role. But
yeah,
yeah, maybe Beatrice.
yeah. Have you been to Shakespeare in the Park in New York?
I
Is it
have
in
not actually.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds
One
like
day.
Yeah, that's a bucket list thing for me as well, seeing Shakespeare in the Park. Yeah. But there's that's oh I was about to ask you, like, I'd love to see all these shows like with these big. I know Denzel Washington actually did Othello recently as well, but with Jake Gyllenhaal, but they were charging what, $1,000 a seat or something like that.
What? Are
Yeah.
you kidding me?
No, I think I
No
read.
way.
I don't know if that's true, but I read somewhere that the producers of that show were charging $1,000 a pop for those seats, and I thought,
Lord.
no, that's not
Oh,
right.
wow.
That's
Oh,
not
goodness.
right. No,
I didn't hear about that. But yeah,
no.
that's
I remember reading it somewhere. Hopefully that's not true, but yeah, but yeah, theatre prices these days. It's like you can only go to the theatre now if you're rich. And it's like, yeah, that's got to change. That's really got to change.
yeah,
But
for sure.
that's a whole other conversation, isn't it? But honestly,
Yeah.
Joyce, I think we could probably talk about Shakespeare and stuff for another 2 hours and everything.
I'd
So
love to go to London one day and see, of course, Shakespeare in the homeland of Shakespeare.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Obviously,
Yeah,
if you can actually, that's a little plug for the Globe actually, because I actually worked there for as a steward actually the summer before lockdown, and
nice.
honestly, if you get yourself to the Globe, it's just a stunning, stunning experience, and it's actually built on. Except the Globe where it is now is not the exact same location as the original one. The original one is like a 2 minute walk actually up the road. It's only around the corner. But if you get there, if you get grounding tickets, they're £5 each. You are standing the whole time, but that's what it would have been like back in the day if you're a grounding. Of course,
Hmm.
you can get seated, you can get seats as well, and they're not like West End prices or nothing. They're more reasonable, but £5, 3 hours of Shakespeare in the sun in the summer on the homeland. I can't recommend it enough. So when you come to London, I recommend doing that highly, highly, and to see anything at all.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Definitely. I will definitely do that.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, Joyce, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for this. I've got two more questions. Two really quick fire questions to finish off. The last two questions for every guest, which is,
Okay.
so first of all, what would you say was a bit of advice you wish you heard at the beginning of your career?
Yeah, I would say I think when I was kind of in the beginning or after graduation, it was kind of the early 2000s. I wish there was more of a message of independence. Like there's a different way because I think, but maybe people didn't know that because it was kind of early on, things like YouTube and the internet. Well, I mean, the internet had been around, but like exploring these avenues for more independent creativity, entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
things like that, where you can do things in a more independent way. Uh, because I found my way to that, doing off book it and doing something that's unique to myself and um, independent much later. But I wish I had that message kind of sooner and gotten started sooner in that way. I find that very satisfying and very empowering, kind of the tools that we have at our disposal right now. It's just
Mm,
very, very empowering and for people to embrace that. I wish I had embraced that sooner.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, no, that's good. It's good. And it's good that things are, in this ever-changing landscape which we find ourselves in. It's always important to like see what's working, and there are still some good things out there. Of course, there are. And finally, today, what would you say has been an experience or experiences you've had in your career up to now that you'll never ever forget?
Never ever forget. I would say when my students come and tell me how much my my course, my coaching or whatever has helped them, that's that's always like a very, very satisfying experience
Of
to
course.
me. Um, and yeah, when they say things like it changed my life, to be able to see how transformative that is, I feel like is very, very um, again, just like very satisfying to me, and like it just like gives me a boost to to know that. So yeah,
Yeah.
I would say those experiences are always like the most compelling. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It shows you do great work. And like I say, I love the masterclass. I love what you do, and I suppose really it's just not only a thank you for your time today, but also thank you for being like, being one of the very few sources, or probably the only source of people saying, look, you're in trouble learning lines. It's all right. You come to me. I've got you covered, and we'll help break this together. And I think it's brilliant what you're doing. And I implore people to go and watch the masterclass. I implore you to them get in touch, do your courses, etc. Offline learning is a problem for anyone watching or listening. And this has been an absolute joy, Joyce. Thank you so much for today. I've really enjoyed this, and talk about Shakespeare as well as learning lines as well. It's always a pleasure. So thank you so much. I mean, if you just hang on, I'll finish the recording. We'll have a tiny debrief, then you can shoot off. So yeah, brilliant stuff. Guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This has been the Uncensored Critic Podcast, and I'll be back very, very, very soon. And Joyce, thank you.
Thank you.